This guide will be based solely on data gathered during my playtime during the closed beta. As such, any changes that are made to the game after said closed beta may or may not impact the value of this guide, so proceed with caution. That being said, I did take into account that while changes are likely, the core concept of New World's PvP will most likely not change very much from what it was during the closed beta up until the official release. I also want to state that gear and builds are not the goal for this guide. This guide is more so concerned with mechanical things involved in the game, and I will make a build guide at some point. Before we begin the guide, I'd like to discuss my credentials. I played New World PvP for over 180 hours on the most populated PvP server in the NA East region, which was Olympus. While I did participate in large-scale PvP, majority of my time was spent in duels and small-scale PvP. My entire goal for the beta was to leave the beta with a relatively decent understanding of the game and its combat at a mechanical level, and I think I achieved that to a reasonable enough degree that I could start teaching what I've learned to others. I also want to state that I think that the Life Staff in its current form is the single best PvP weapon in the game, and as such should be worn by any serious PvPer if it is not changed on release. That being said, I know many do not like the playstyle of the Life Staff, so for those people, and also on the off chance that the Life Staff gets changed in some way, this guide should still be valuable. So let's start off with the fundamentals. In New World, you have 4 combat options: skills, auto attacks, dodging, and blocking. Skills have cooldowns, so they will need to be used situationally, and there is a cost of stamina to dodge and also to successfully block, while auto attacking costs no stamina and has no cooldown either. This in turn encourages players to think about how to fight in a more simplified way, and to be fair, they aren't wrong. Why would you worry about dodging or blocking when your opponent is attacking you when you could just attack him back without depleting any of your resources? When both players think this way, the PvP turns into a trading match, and this is where the skill cap of New World will lie, at least in small scale. The goal should be to trade with your opponent as little as possible, giving them damage without taking any in return, and doing so over and over again until your opponent is weak enough that trading doesn't matter anymore or the fight is won. So how do we accomplish this goal? How do we trade as little as possible while doing as much damage as possible? Well, there are several ways. The first and most important way is spacing. Spacing is a term that is common in almost every action game, but if you're unfamiliar with it, it essentially means keeping a certain distance away from your opponent so that you can hit them with your longest reaching hitbox without giving them a chance to retaliate. Weapons like the spear and the straight sword are great for spacing because their heavy attacks reach a lot further than other melee weapons do. Many players in New World either do not understand the concept of spacing outside of kiting, or simply do not bother to implement it in their play, so you doing so will automatically put you leagues ahead of most of the player base. The second way is crowd control, or CC for short. When you apply a CC to an opponent, they are unable to act, or acting becomes more difficult for them for a specified amount of time. There are different types of crowd control in New World, but they all fall under one of 2 categories, either a hard CC or a soft CC. An example of a hard CC would be a stun, which makes your opponent completely unable to move no matter what they do, and an example of a soft CC would be a slow, meaning your opponent can act, but not as efficiently as normal. Using both spacing and CC will allow you to limit the amount of times you trade with your opponent, thus greatly improving your chances of victory. This means that a good small-scale PvP loadout will always feature weapons that both have either one or both of these features in spades. Keep this in mind when choosing your weapons. Ranged weapons will almost always be the best spacing weapon simply because of their design, so wearing one is never a bad idea. Pairing them with a CC heavy weapon is great because it allows you to use your CC before your opponent can get the chance to attack you after closing the gap on your range. Many loadouts are viable in New World, especially in small scale PvP. Just understand what each weapon is better at doing and play them accordingly. So now we understand spacing in CC. The next thing to do is to apply them as efficiently as possible in our battles. I always see many people try to perform combos in New World, but New World at its core is very much against true combos. A true combo is a combo that cannot be avoided or dodged out of once the first hit of the combo has successfully landed. Most true combos in New World will only be 2 hits, 3 if you're lucky, and 4 hits is the absolute top I've ever seen. You would think that it would be higher than that, seeing all the different forms of CC in the game, but it's not the case. You see, the recovery time for a lot of hard CC is very low. If you knock back someone or knock down someone, you will only have enough time to successfully land 1 hit on them because the recovery time is so short they will be able to dodge out of it immediately after that. The same thing goes for stuns. While stuns themselves last several seconds depending on the skill, the moment your opponent receives any form of damage outside of damage over time, he will be able to move immediately. The instinct of a player experienced in action games will automatically assume that the most logical way to utilize CC is to perform the CC, chain an auto attack in, then perform the next CC and chain an auto attack in, and so on and so forth. However, New World does not work this way, and so we must adjust our instincts accordingly. That being said, there are ways to perform true combos in New World. For example, with a spear, sweep into vault kick into javelin throw is a true combo and cannot be avoided. Another example is sword and shield, leaping strike into shield bash into reverse stab. So hopefully you can see the value in having a weapon with multiple hard CC abilities. You have to keep in mind that the entire time your opponent is hard CC'd, they cannot harm you, so therefore they cannot trade with you. This automatically puts you at a big advantage in a fight if you can land one. There is even an argument to have 2 weapons with hard CC abilities. Chaining these abilities properly could perhaps allow for even more than a 4-hit combo, and is something I plan on testing thoroughly when the game is released. The core thing I want you to understand is that true combos are very possible in New World. They just have to be very basic and to the point. Hard CC into hard CC into hard CC. No auto attack chaining. But this doesn't mean that a long true combo is always the answer. Sometimes the damage potential of a 2-hit combo can outweigh the guarantee that you won't have to trade that a longer combo gives you. For example, if you land a successful riposte with the rapier and then dash behind your opponent and perform a heavy attack, this damage will be so substantial that it may be worth giving up a different combo opportunity. Taking advantage of the time that a stun gives you and using it to perform back attacks is greatly recommended, and whether or not it is better to do another CC or to do the back attack will vary from weapon to weapon and what your cooldowns are looking like and many other variables. While CC is pretty simple, it's going to be harder to land CCs if you aren't spacing properly, and spacing is something that you will have to practice to get an understanding of. You need to learn the hitbox of your weapon and understand when you can space and what you can't space. For practicing learning spacing, I recommend the spear. Even if you don't want to main the weapon, practicing spacing with it will greatly increase your understanding of the mechanic, and then you can apply it to other weapons like the rapier. Spacing is very good against weapons like great axes and warhammers that have fairly small range on their auto attacks. Just make sure to keep your thumb on your dodge button in case they use an ability. Now obviously you can't always avoid trading. At some point your opponent will be able to close the gap on you. That's just the nature of the game, and they may have ranged weapons as well. This is where the dodge rolling mechanic comes into play. Dodge rolling is significantly better than hopping because dodge rolling allows for you to better reposition yourself, which goes back to spacing. If your opponent uses an ability, a dodge roll will not only allow you to iframe it, but also allow you to get behind your opponent to punish them for their attack. When using abilities in New World, your character is immobile for the most part, so learning the timing of dodging every ability in the game and applying that logic will be crucial. I just can't see someone being competitive in small scale PvP without the light roll. It's just too important of a tool to pass up. Another option where your opponent closes the gap is blocking, but I'm personally not a fan of blocking unless you have a sword and a shield and your opponent is using ranged attacks. Any other time just puts you at a detriment more than an advantage, so for the most part I would avoid blocking almost all of the time. Understanding these mechanics will put you vastly ahead of the majority of the player base. Build your character and your playstyle around these mechanics in whatever way you see fit, and you will dominate most players in the game, regardless of their level, gear, or weapon choice. Subscribe for more PvP oriented New World videos and check out my Twitch when I stream. Have a great day.